have to do is say the word. Every voter should ask themselves a simple question. Do you want the radical left policies of Chicago, Minneapolis, San Francisco imposed on the entire country? Look at Nancy Pelosi. San Francisco's going to hell, and she's in Congress saying what we should be doing. Look at the homeless problem in San Francisco. Look at what's happening in San Francisco. And then she's telling us about the post office. She has no clue. And I must tell you this, does she love our country? Does she love our country? I don't think so, to be honest with you. What she's done is a disgrace to our country, what she's done. And Schumer, crying Chuck. Crying Chuck. He cries whenever it's important to cry. Do you want the failed policies of Mayor Bill de Blasio? Or Mayor Lori Lightfoot, Chicago? Or Mayor Jacob Fry, brought to every city and town in this nation? If left-wing Democrats can't run a city, why on earth would you let them run your country?
One would think that the results of Democrat rule would prohibit Democrats from ever running another city, and certainly the country along with it. If you were judging Democrats by what their ideas lead to in places like Baltimore, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, you'd say, well, this is a disaster. And yet the Democrat Party has a stranglehold, has a total lock on political power in those places, in those cities. So much so that they don't even feel the need to condemn outright calling for violence from BLM protesters. They won't suffer. The Democrats who run these cities, de Blasio, Cuomo at the state level, other people across the country who are running Democrat hellholes, they won't suffer any consequences for allowing stuff like what we see in Portland or Seattle to happen in their cities. There's no impetus, there's no push for them to condemn this stuff. I mean, here you had, this was in Portland over the weekend, this is making the rounds now, a BLM, quote, protester, I think protest is far too generous a term, telling us exactly how devoted to the cause she is and what she is willing to do.
I said I will continue my mission for justice by any means necessary. I don't think y'all hear me. I'm going to say it one more time. I said that I will continue my mission for justice to hold police accountable for murders and murdering our people by any means necessary. And I'm sure we all know what any means necessary is and how it can go.
Calling cops murderers, that's standard fare now for Democrats. You might as well just sit back and watch CNN and MSNBC. You can see them calling cops murderers all the time, too. They have no problem with any of this. New York Times, same thing. How many murders in the last 30 days have there been of unarmed black men in the United States, a country of 330 million people, by law enforcement? I think the answer is 0. Oh, but it's a terrible plague that happens constantly in America. That's what the lib media says. That's what they want you to believe. I would want to ask this BLM protester, what does she mean by any means necessary? Because if we're basing it on what we've already seen in cities across the country, that would mean a willingness to burn down buildings, to pull people out of cars and beat them senseless and almost to death, to destroy stores, to loot, to rob, to threaten, to engage in what the mayor of Chicago has even said is organized criminal activity. Any means necessary, she says. The BLM movement of the past, remember this is the second time, this is the 2.0. The first BLM movement from the second term of the Obama administration after the lawful and justified shooting of Mike Brown by a police officer who did nothing wrong. The first iteration of BLM fell apart. Why? It's worth remembering. Because 5 members of the Dallas Police Department were murdered by a BLM supporter, and that came after two police officers in the NYPD, Lou and Ramos, murdered in their car by another BLM supporter. And I know people would say, well, those individuals were deranged. Yeah. So are thousands of the people marching in the streets, lying down in front of cars and then mobbing them, pulling people out, punching them, attacking them, spitting at cops, throwing rocks at cops. That's all crazy too. Because why are they doing this? What do they think they are accomplishing with this? They don't have any good answers for that. Any means necessary. That is what we're up against. Worth remembering it as we go into this election. And worth remembering that Democrats will leverage, will exploit people who tell you straight up they will do whatever they have to. Any means necessary is the promise of the BLM movement and the shock troops of the Democrat Party, Antifa, and all the rest of it. Don't forget that. Don't allow them to pretend that's not a major part of this conversation. There's a video that is going very viral, a good video, of Kim Klacik. Now, I know Kim Klacik. She's a great, great lady. I've had her on my show before. She's, I think, got a big future in politics. She's very talented in media. She's a young African-American woman, a mother, wife, and she's running for Elijah Cummings' seat in Baltimore in Congress. And she has made a video that does what you would think our mainstream media, if they were trying to actually do journalism, would have done so much nobody would pay any attention. She made a video where she just walks around Baltimore and shows you what it looks like, what's going on there, and then shares some very basic but important statistics and facts about what's going on there and who's in charge. I can tell you, having been in some of those same parts of Baltimore, that you feel like this can't be America. This can't be a major city on the East Coast of the United States in 2020. It's just not possible for there to be so much decay and despair and misery concentrated in one place. Here is the first part of this. Remember, this is an ad for Congress. It's very effective. It's gone viral. Here's Kim Klasik's first ad.
Do you care about Black lives? The people that run Baltimore don't. I can prove it. Walk with me. They don't want you to see this. I'm Kim Klacik. This is Baltimore, the real Baltimore. This is the reality for Black people every single day. Crumbling infrastructure, abandoned homes, poverty, and crime. Baltimore has been run by the Democrat Party for 53 years. What is the result of their decades of leadership? Baltimore is one of the top 5 most dangerous cities in America. The murder rate in Baltimore is 10 times the U.S. average. The Baltimore poverty rate is over 20%. Homicide, drug, and alcohol deaths are skyrocketing in our city. Do you believe Black Lives Matter? I do. The vast majority of crime in Baltimore is perpetrated against Black people, who make up 60% of the population. So why don't we care about our communities? The Democrat Party have betrayed the Black people of Baltimore. If the politicians walked the streets like I do, they would see exactly how their policies and corruption affects us.
What is there that the Democrats in Baltimore can point to and say, see, we've made things better? Where is the improvement? Decades in power. Failing schools, high poverty numbers, astonishing murder numbers, burnt out buildings all over the place, trash, and more trash behind buildings and in between them. It just, people use these abandoned lots as landfills. It's unsanitary, it attracts vermin, it's terrible what goes on. What do Democrats point to as why they should be entrusted with more power? Oh, Trump's a racist. That's what they'll tell you. Democrats are for African Americans. Republicans are not. That's it. That's what you'll be told. That's the only answer. It's never about the results, because the results in Detroit, in Baltimore, in Missouri, the results in San Francisco, in Portland, major Democrat cities, the results are appalling. when they have this kind of unified control. Remember, New York City was a terrible place under Democrat rule, and then a Republican came in and cleaned it up, Rudy Giuliani, and then a sort of Republican, really an independent, Bloomberg, just kept the Giuliani stuff in place, and New York got a little bit lucky too. But it wasn't Democrats that cleaned up New York City. Democrats don't clean up cities, they ruin them. Trump knows this, which is why he's making that point. But then there's another part of this. Kim asks black residents of Baltimore on the streets, what do you think about defunding police, which is a rallying cry for the Democrat base?
If they don't want to see it, they don't want you to see this. Go to any Baltimore neighborhood and ask this question. Do you want to defund the police?
No.
No.
Absolutely not.
I had 3 sons killed in Baltimore City. And I think if we defund the police officer, it's going to be worse than that. So no, I'm opposed to that.
What are you going to defund the police for? Why? How do you defend your city, your community? Families are losing people.
It's not just Baltimore. The worst place for a black person to live in America is a Democrat-controlled city. It's 2020. Name a blue city where black people's lives have gotten better. Try. I'll wait. Look at this. How are children supposed to live here and play here? Democrats think black people are stupid. They think they can control us forever, that we won't demand better and that we'll keep voting for them forever, despite what they've done to our families and our communities. Are they right? I'm Kim Klacik, and I'm running for Congress because I actually care about black lives. All black lives matter. Our communities matter. Baltimore matters. And black people don't have to vote Democrat.
A very powerful ad from Kim Klacik. The governor of New York was also featured last night at the Democrat National Convention. Oh, tonight they're going to have a whole bunch of other people. Yeah, whatever. The governor of New York was featured last night. This is outrageous. Okay? This is a guy who has the single worst record as a leader in politics when it comes to COVID of anybody. 6,600, more like 11,000 now. Even Trump is going after this guy on this. It's completely absurd. Absurd that he is being elevated as somebody that should be listened to. He's writing a book on getting us through the COVID crisis. Cuomo writing a book on leadership during COVID. What's next? De Blasio writing a book on how to just say no to drugs. Hey. Unbelievable. Unbelievable that this is what's going on. And here he is last night saying it.
Our nation is in crisis, and in many ways, COVID is just a metaphor. A virus attacks when the body is weak and when it cannot defend itself. Over these past few years, America's body politic has been weakened. The divisions have been growing deeper. The anti-Semitism, the anti-Latino, the anti-immigrant fervor, the racism in Charlottesville, where the KKK didn't even bother to wear their hoods. And in Minnesota, where the life was squeezed from Mr. Floyd. Only a strong body can fight off the virus, and America's divisions weakened it. Donald Trump didn't create the initial division. The division created Trump. He only made it worse. Our collective strength is exercised through government. It is, in effect, our immune system. And our current federal government is dysfunctional and incompetent. It couldn't fight off the virus. In fact, it didn't even see it coming. The European virus infected the Northeast while the White House was still fixated on China.
I mean, how many stupid things, how many lies and misdirections can one guy get into one speech? First of all, calling it the European virus is moronic. Okay. I mean, he just does this to try to antagonize Trump and Trump voters and hoping to get some points with the left-wing base with all of this. It's from China. Trump is right that it's from China. But Cuomo was also singing a very different tune, but a couple of months ago when he was saying that President Trump was very responsive, the federal government was on it, they're helpful. I remember all of that. And now, sure enough, he turns against everything that he had said before because the politics of the moment demanded. He even goes with the big lie of Democrats against Trump for the last 4 years. You know, he goes to the big lie against Trump that he's the reason that all of our divisions have gotten worse. They told us, let's look at this for a second. Democrats have told us that there was a traitor in the White House, that the president of the United States betrayed this country to work with Russia, a hostile foreign power, to steal the election. That was Democrat dogma for years. They completely believed it. The media was all about it. A lie. And they want to lecture us about Trump lies all the time. Like I've always said, Trump lies about what he had for breakfast or how he's the greatest at something of all time, which isn't really a lie. It's just an opinion that can't be disproven. Cuomo lies about stuff. The fact that he's writing a book on how to respond to COVID-19 just shows you the thermonuclear level gaslighting that we should all be expecting from this. It's already happening, but it'll continue to happen going forward. As if he has something to teach any of us. New York is maybe now, after what, 6-7 months of lockdown? I'm still getting my test and trace core. Pretty scary when you think about it. Test and trace core sending me messages every day. Don't leave your house. Not allowed to leave your house. Don't go anywhere. Based on what? If I tell them that I'm going to John Lewis's 8th funeral ceremony, am I allowed to be outside? Is that okay? Because it's okay for Democrats. They can travel. Waived all the restrictions on them. Can I say that I'm going to a BLM protest? Does that then mean that I get to break my... This is home confinement. They might as well have an ankle monitor on me. Can't go out for 2 weeks. That's what they say. The Test and Trace Corps. Highly trained medical professionals, I'm sure. People that have had this job for, I don't know, at least a couple of weeks. They probably had a solid hour or two of online training before they're able to ask me all about my medical history and tell me what I can do with my life. 2 weeks of lockdown. I mean, you know, Cuomo is really writing a book, which he allegedly is. It should just be, I'm sorry, I'm such a blanking moron. But that's not going to happen. Democrats are invested in pretending that the blue states, the biggest blue states, were not the worst in responding to COVID. Florida, Texas, way better with their red governors and either their red or purple populations politically, way better at dealing with COVID than Cuomo. But he's still out there pounding his chest, telling everybody, he knows how to get it done. Sure. If catastrophe is the goal, he succeeded.
Time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Get to it. First up, let's just remind everybody, go to bucksexton.com and check out if you want to send us your thoughts on anything. You can do so a couple of ways. One, and hopefully we'll actually do it this week on Friday, you can call in 844-900-2825, 844-900-BUCK. Yep, that's the way it goes. 844-900-BUCK. Leave us a message. Producer Mark really likes it if you will sing a song to him.
I think I have to get my resume ready again.
I'm just saying, Producer Mark's favorite thing. He likes sonnets. He likes poems of all kinds. If you send him a limerick, he'll get really excited.
Yeah, it's getting a little dusty. I'm going to have to start sending it out to people.
Yeah. 844-900-2825 is the voicemail box. If you want to send us written stuff, which does not quite upset Mark the same way, you can do that at facebook.com/BuckSexton or teambuck@iheartmedia.com. PR things where you want me to have a guest on the show, PR people out there who use our Team Buck email for that purpose, those get deleted. Don't do that. We don't like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're listening, Buck.
Well, you know what I mean. Just saying. It gets a little frustrating sometimes.
The funniest is when we get, do you want this former Joe Biden aide on? I was like, do you know who you're sending this email to?
Yeah, well, sometimes I want to be like, yeah, we should have him on just to sort of see how quickly they would figure out what's happening. You know?
I think the second I emailed them back and they looked you up, but they'd realize how stupid they are.
Yeah. Or they could try to come into Buck's Thunderdome and see what happens. 2 men enter, 1 man leaves. You know, it would be good.
All right, I'll set that up.
No, let's not. The audience, I don't think. See, people always think they want to hear a debate on the radio, but a debate on the radio gets very hostile very quickly, and then people will crosstalk. And crosstalk on TV is bad when people are trying to talk over each other and won't stop. But crosstalk on radio just turns into noise, and I don't want people to switch from this show to, easy listening, 109.9, the greatest hits of the late 70s or something. You know what I mean? We don't need that.
Yeah, we like music, but after the Buck Sexton show.
Yeah, exactly. You got to listen to the Buck Sexton show first. Oh, and to that end, the Pass the Buck campaign, absolutely essential. We want people to please listen to the Buck Sexton show on podcast, because that way, no matter where they are across the country, even if they don't have one of our fantastic affiliates broadcasting the radio signal to them, they can listen on either the iHeartRadio app if they want, which is a great, very useful app, or they can just download the podcast. I think the podcast interface on Spotify is really easy to use. Apple Podcasts, obviously a big thing still. No one calls it iTunes anymore. What happened to that?
It's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, I don't
You don't really buy things on the iTunes store.
It'll kind of always be iTunes to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's how you know you're old.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I still call where the Mets play Shea Stadium.
Mm-hmm. So, now let's get into our Facebook. Wait, what? It's not Shea Stadium. What is it?
It's Citi Field.
Oh, for City
They built
Group?
a new stadium in 2009.
Oh, I was unaware of that.
Really?
I mean, I think I've heard of it, but I would not. If you had asked me, I would have said Shea Stadium.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Who was the Shea of the Shea Stadium?
It was William A. Shea. He was instrumental in getting the Mets to exist after the Dodgers and the Giants left to go to the West Coast.
Very interesting. Okay. Michael, while you consider the fraud in the Biden-Harris ticket is their promise of uniting this nation, while the party seems to insist on keeping us divided, I view it as the Democrats holding this nation hostage in the hopes of getting their way, which might not be a genie, but they can put it back in the bottle. Riot shields high. I view it as the Democrats holding this nation hostage. Okay, Michael. Thank you for writing in. Karen. Hey, Buck. Like you, I am not. Yes. Karen is not impressed. Remember that meme back in the day with the gymnast? Not impressed. I think it was Kayla is not impressed, right? Wasn't it Kayla Maroney or Mulroney or something?
Oh, yeah, the famous gymnast.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't remember her name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
She's very good, though.
She's very good, but I think she got a silver medal, and she had this look on her face like, and everyone did the not impressed thing. Anyway, Karen is not impressed here. With Jill Biden's doctorate in education. I have a master's degree in education. Most of the ed classes turned out to be more or less useless. The courses that are important are subject matter classes like physics if you're teaching physics, Spanish if you're teaching Spanish, etc. The only essential ed course is student teaching. If you can work under someone who really knows his craft, which I was lucky enough to do. I couldn't even tell you anymore what most of the other classes were, except they were vapid and super easy. Karen, I really appreciate this. Because, come on. Does anybody who wants a doctorate in education fail? No. Does anyone who wants a doctorate in education know anything at the end of it that they probably didn't know before? No. So why am I supposed to be impressed and call someone a doctor for that? I'm sorry. Not going to fly. Not going to fly. So, there you go. David. Let's see here. Thanks for getting Mike Slater to fill in the other day. I will add his podcast to the list of people I listen to. I especially like his world history stories. Producer Mark, what stories did he tell about history? I'm curious.
I mean, he did a lot of stuff, so I can't really give you off the top of my head.
I'm just wondering if he went into a story about a particular region or something.
He actually did a whole hour on the Siege of Malta.
I was going to say, if you got him to do a Malta podcast, we're both going to get a code red. He would totally do it, by the way. If I was like, hey, Mike, can you do me a favor? Could you do a 6-hour-long series on malt this weekend? He'd be like, bro, absolutely. Happy to do it. Yeah, that sounds great. I love history.
And he would do it incredibly well, and he could probably do it in an hour.
He would probably do it by Monday. Yeah, no, he's
exactly.
he's a very squared away guy.
We should just add him to the podcast network and have him do the history podcast.
There you go. He would totally do it. He'd be like, I just stay up till 3 a.m. every night for 3 nights. I got 2 hours of sleep, but totally worth it. So anyway, we got an idea. Maybe that's what we'll do. Or maybe for Labor Day weekend. I don't know. People are going to need something to listen to. Maybe we put out a special podcast then, Producer Mark. Maybe I'm going to surprise you with a plan.
0 chance. I just want to warn the listeners, it's not going to happen. I don't want you to get your hopes up.
We'll see. The more he goads me, team, the more likely it is that he'll get a surprise.
I know what I'm doing.
David writes that Mike's worldview complements your social view very well. You guys ought to consider some tag team broadcasts. Well, David, that's why we have Mike fill in, because we think he does such a good job on top of being a really good guy. So, yeah, we're already working with him on stuff. It'll be fun to do a tag. I mean, he's had me on his show before, and I really appreciate that. So he's on a great network out in San Diego that we are also on.
KFMB?
I was going to say KFMB. So, which is, we are very thankful to be reaching that wonderful San Diego audience. That's a top-tier radio station. So, yay. And Mike's on that one. We're on that one. And next up here, we have Andrew, Buck, and Producer Mark. I've been seeing so many out-of-state license plates here in Indiana near Fort Wayne in Whoa land. It's a bit unsettling to see New York and New Jersey plates on cars slowly cruising through my quiet burb. I realize they want to flee the insanity, but don't bring those crazy policies to my town. Anyway, if the crazy libs are fleeing cities, causing prices on real estate to plunge in those cities, wouldn't this be a golden opportunity for more conservative homebuyers and businesses to consider snapping up the vacant areas? What if cities could go from deep blue to purple or even red? Insane mayors could even be replaced with sane ones. Just a thought. Shields high from Indiana. Whoa. There we go. Whoa, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Another great heritage radio station that we are on and are very pleased to be. Let's see here. Do we think we can flip some cities from deep blue to maybe a faint shade of purple? I don't know about that. I would love to say that I think it's possible. In fact, what I would like to happen is I would want conservatives to, this should be like a project. You know, instead of sending checks to a think tank, people should create some nonprofit that just says, we're going to take as many conservatives as we can. We're going to take as many conservatives as possible. We're going to move them all to one city. And we're going to have a conservative city where you're allowed to own guns, where your taxes are low, where law and order are enforced. And just to do, it would be so powerful if we could have that. I mean, Producer Mark, if you could make one city, conservative and therefore more sane, if we could flip one city red, which one would it be for you? Other than New York, which is where we currently are. Take New York out of the equation.
You know, I want to move away from New York. I want to move as far as humanly possible. I'd have to think about that. Maybe somewhere in California? Maybe San Diego?
I was going to say probably. If we could steal San Diego from the libs, that would be wonderful.
Maybe even Miami, something like that.
Miami would be great. If we could steal Austin from the libs, I'd be very excited. Oh, you know, if we could make that the red stronghold, the capital of Texas, that would be great. Even Dallas is majority Democrat now, which is so sad. So sad. You know, Chicago's a great town, I hear, but yeah, it's too cold. Too cold. Freezing winters. Can't handle that stuff. I want better weather. You got to have better weather. You get to be my age, Producer Mark, and the bones start to hurt with the cold weather, and the shoulder gets a little creaky, and, you know, you don't want any of that.
I get it. I'm 27 going on 75.
Yeah. You know where they don't have those kinds of problems? Sunny southern Florida.
Well, I'll be there soon.
Mm-hmm.
7 months left on my lease.
John, Buck, I live in Utah where we do have mail-in ballots. I had to re-register to vote by going to the county offices with my Social Security card and a certified birth certificate. The dude who said that Utah has a working system didn't mention the standards that require a voter to be more than breathing. Getting an absentee ballot when I was in the service is much easier. Well, John, see, this is what I'm saying. It's disingenuous to pretend, and this is what all the lib media is doing, to pretend that it's the same thing to be absentee ballot and also universal mail-in ballot. It's not the same thing, okay? Not the same thing. So that's just untrue. The media keeps pretending, and I'm here to tell you what's what. Is there a huge question mark over the degree of fraud? Yeah, of course, but the degree of fraud in a close presidential election is something we should be doing everything we can to work against. You know, Democrats will embrace this if it saves just one life in public policy argument when it suits them. Well, what are we willing to do to if it saves just one election, which affects a whole lot of lives and the future of this country? And you know, you'd think that they would, if they were being honest about any of this, they'd be willing to admit that election security is really important, but election security does not matter to them. They want it to be loose and lax and easy. That's what they want. That's the purpose. That's the point. So, yep. Let's see. Who's next here? Thomas. If Nancy Pelosi succeeds in getting the members of the House to return to D.C. on Saturday, Kevin McCarthy should make the motion on the floor to remove Pelosi from office. She's no longer capable of conducting a rational process of legislation. Republicans should walk out as soon as Pelosi attempts to address voting for any legislation directed at the USPS without proper committee discussions. Formal legislation for the issue, 72 hours for the public to respond to their representatives. Those are the procedures institutionalized by Pelosi and Obama. They have not changed. This insanity has to stop. We can't afford Congress anymore. Shields high. Okay, Thomas. Thomas, I feel like, knows a lot about this issue and has thought about it very deeply. He seems like a very smart fellow. So I'm just going to say, cool, thank you. I like where your head's at. Next up in roll call, Ann. Hey, Buck and producer Mark. A co-retiree of mine with the USPS brought up the point that he has been USPS retired for over 16 years after nearly 34 years of service. I myself have been retired almost 2 years after 32 years of service. He doesn't remember in his lifetime Congress coming off recess to conduct business regarding the post office. In fact, unless it was to their advantage politically, he doesn't remember any of them giving a rat's patoot? Producer Mark, you heard that word before?
It's a nice way of saying the other word.
Yeah. A rat's patoot about the post office or those employed there ever. I can say I totally agree with my former coworker, and I'm sure any other postal workers listening will agree also. Congress has never given this much attention to the postal service. Congress is a big part of the reason the post office is in debt due to Congress requiring the USPS to pre-fund health care for retirees. And listen to KFAB Omaha via iHeartRadio. Love your show. Shields high. Well, Ann, thanks for listening on KFAB Omaha. Appreciate it. Great to have you as part of the team. And thank you for bringing some real insight and expertise to the issue of the post office and postal workers. So thank you so much for that. Indeed. Joseph, hey, Buck, really enjoy listening to the show. I keep hearing about voter fraud and whether it is a serious problem, yada, yada, yada. Voting by mail presents other problems besides fraud. I've heard of ballots getting lost, misplaced, etc. Technically, that's not always fraud, but it sure sounds unacceptable to me and would lead to an inaccurate tally of the votes in a timely manner. Also, how can they certify to a person that his or her vote was counted and that the privacy of his or her vote was protected? How does that happen? I have seen how they do that in my polling place, in-person voting, and it looks pretty secure. And then he just added in, Mitt Romney is an embarrassment. Joseph, certainly correct on that last one. And as for the voting procedures, Yeah, man, it's kind of Byzantine and arcane and complicated, and there's a lot of ways that it can go south. So making it more complicated and more difficult, probably not a good idea, but the libs want to do it because disruption and dishonesty are the water in which they swim. That's it for the day, everybody. Thank you so much. Back tomorrow. Pass the buck. Get someone to listen to this podcast this week, please. Someone you know in your life. Until tomorrow, shields high.